Hello, my name is Susan Kraft, and this is Talk Art, a program sponsored by Golden Artist Colors and Silicon Valley Open Studios. Every year during the first 3 weekends in May, more than 300 Silicon Valley artists open their studios to the public. This free event lets you discover some exciting new artists and get up close and personal with some of your favorite artists. You can find out more about Open Studios by going to our website, svos.org. You can find out more about Golden by going to goldenpaints.com. Today we're going to talk to an assemblage artist, Mariane Lettieri. Assemblage? Found object artist is another way to say that, or even eco art. I kind of like eco art. Mariane, what do you prefer?
Well, actually, I'm calling myself a mixed media construction artist, but I like the eco art. I think the idea of repurposing objects and keeping them out of the landfill is a good idea.
Okay, okay. You know, I completely agree with you. In fact, I've been drawn more and more to the eco art collective myself, and I'm kind of thinking about diving into it, but I'm not quite sure. It looks like it's really complicated.
It can be, and I think. But I think if you're coming in with artistic background, you know principles of design, composition, then it's just like any other art. Instead of using paint or pencils, you're using found objects.
Found objects.
Actually, you're assemblage, and that's the French pronunciation, assemblage, like collage. But if you want to use the American accent and say assemblage, that's quite acceptable as well. But it is a process of making 3D composition out of objects that were not intended to be art materials.
Okay. So as you collect pieces that you found, I would imagine that if you want to compare it to myself as an artist or other artists with your background, then instead of having tubes of different colored paints, you have drawers of different colored objects?
Yes, I have in my studio. I have drawers of doll parts, metal objects, natural objects, fabric, remnants of things. So dresses and gloves.
Wow! Wow!
Yeah.
I think we're going to see some of those pieces. You've got some on the studio.
I'm excited to show you some. Yes.
And you were going to show us some really soon. What is the meaning of it? So you're trained as a classical artist, correct?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So then you moved into this later on. You certainly didn't have a class in assemblage or found art.
No,
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because I remember even in my degree is in printmaking and drawing, and I really didn't do well in sculpture class.
Really?
Yes, and I really was not interested in it. And but eventually, perhaps it's my love affair with old objects and patina. I decided that was what I wanted to do, and it could be someday my art will start getting more flat and going back to paint and drawing and printmaking. But right now, I still have something to say with those objects, and I'm still using them.
Making it flat, it makes it sound so boring. Flat art.
Flat art, yes, but I don't do flat art right now. Although my hands sometimes
2D,
say,
2D.
Please.
You know, I know there's a lot of 2D artists out there. She doesn't really mean it's flat. She meant to say 2D, didn't
Yes,
you? Okay. So, so the meaning of your art, when you moved from the 2D into your three-dimensional art of assembling other three-dimensional pieces, what was if you can think back, what was the original meaning for you? Or were you drawn by, were you inspired by somebody else, or did you just have to put this stuff together in a funny way? Or a particular way?
I think it's the objects themselves. Now, later on, I'm going to show you and the viewers some of the historical and more traditional assemblage work that has inspired me. But right now, when I go into the studio, the way I work, my muse or my inspiration, typically will come from one of two things. Either the object itself, it's like synchronicity. We found each other, and it inspires me to do something with it, to put something else on it or next to it. So maybe it's the object that inspires me, but sometimes I have something that I want to say as an artist. Maybe I'm dealing with a certain concept or an issue, something that is important to me, and then I'll go out and try to find objects that help me to communicate.
You know, I think that when you talk about finding an object finds you, I think almost anybody can relate to that. People look for four-leaf clovers, they find a lucky penny, or they find something of interest, and then they might even wear it. They'll attach it to a necklace, and they'll wear it for years, or around their wrist or something. They just, you know, so people, most people do this in a very small way.
Right.
So, so you've taken that to a very large art form.
Exactly, and the struggle for an assemblage artist always is trying to control the emotional quality of the object. They have their own voice, and as an artist, I have to control that so that my voice is heard.
I'd like to show some of your work.
I would. I'd love to show you some.
Okay, I know we have several pieces here, but we also have quite a few that we're going to show on this screen. If you could bring up the slideshow. Now our first piece is of the Declaration.
Yes, now Declaration was one of a series that I did dealing with the twin concepts of confinement and freedom, and that there is no freedom without boundaries. So in Declaration, there's a bird cage and a chain, a barbell, and behind, if we can move to the
detail piece,
there you go. You see that the canvas has a sky painted on it, but over that is layered a grid of almost 1,400 letters of the Declaration of Independence. Each letter was printed on a American type font on a Macintosh computer and printed. And the whole idea was that the colonies wanted freedom, but they also wanted to subject themselves to another form of government.
That's true. Now, real quick question about that one. We already moved to the next one, but just a moment. You don't have to move back or anything. Are those letters in order?
Oh, yes. You can actually read the Declaration of Independence.
Wow. Okay. The next piece here is a yellow house on wheels.
Oh, forwarding address. This was a fun piece, and it was purchased by an architect. Forwarding address is a house on a vintage antique cartwheels, and collaged on it are house numbers and postcards that represent all the places where I've lived in my life.
Oh, wow, okay.
And this was part of a series that I did about exploring the concept of place and home. And today we just kind of go where inspiration leads us, like the wind.
Yeah, or a rolling rock anyway. And so we have another piece coming up, I think. There it is. It is a green box with a door open.
Oh, that was a tribute that I did to Joseph Cornell. And Joseph Cornell was really a father of assemblage art. And the green box is actually, I believe, a pigeon carrier pigeon case. And each of those compartments has a small assemblage that is a tribute to a series that Joseph Cornell did. Actually, it's displayed just with the one door open, and the others you're supposed to look at from the side.
And our next piece up is a box on top of a table, a white box with a blue interior.
Oh, and it has wheels on it, yes. This is room with a view, and that is, you can take it to a room where there isn't a view.
Oh, so, nice.
And that has to it's dealing with how we view nature.
Okay.
And when it not have its messiness.
The next piece is another, this is a detail of it, or no, it's a white box with a...
that's Dream of the Prodigal Son. This is in reference to the story in the Bible of the prodigal son. And I enjoyed working on this piece. It has a door. The little legs are made by a friend of mine, Karen Truesdale, a wonderful ceramic artist.
Okay. Here's your gloves.
Oh, this piece is called Old Glory.
And this one's in a museum?
It's actually it's in the permanent collection of the San Jose Museum of Quilts and Textiles. And the substrate for this piece was a Depression-era quilt made by my grandmother out of denim overalls and feed sacks. It's called a utility quilt, and it's a tribute to that kind of woman of another age who, through hard work and humble origins, built this republic. My favorite part of this, of course, the stripes are ladies' gloves, but the star field is made out of 48 well-worn pincushions.
Oh, nice. And the next one is, oh, here's more gloves and angel.
Yes, I've really worked hard to find all these gloves, and
Yeah.
this I built the substrate. Working in assemblage, a lot of your problem solving is how to make things work together and make them archival. There is a plaster substrate under these gloves, and yeah, there's about 100 gloves, and it's a tribute to church ladies.
Okay. Oh, very good, very good. The next one is up close.
Yes, all the fingers of these gloves are embroidered with 4-letter words, like they're the dirty words, like dust, bake, wash.
So you did this?
Yes, and again, these are the people that do all this service in the background,
Yeah.
or in their communities.
That's true.
And they're sort of the invisible presence, but they do a lot to serve us.
Very good. And we have a dress with pieces sewn
that's
on
a very recent piece. I just finished it. It's called Naming Day. I made a dress. It's supposed to look like a christening dress out of quilted canvas, and I've sewn onto it a great quantity of white painted animals.
Interesting.
And, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And this one is similar in that it's got painted,
Yes.
sewn on animals and characters.
Well,
and
it's
dolls.
all objects in red, and I made, this is fun. There's a local high school just tore down its old multi-purpose room and put in a beautiful state-of-the-art theater, and they had thrown the curtain outside to be put into the dump, and I took it home and made it into this surplice.
Oh,
And,
okay.
yeah,
Very good.
yeah.
Very
so,
good.
yeah.
And I think what I'd like to do after this slideshow is I would thank you very much for giving us the slideshow of your work, because I know we couldn't bring in. I know you've got hundreds in your studio, and hundreds out there in the community at large. But we also have a few in the studio, and if our studio audience would love to have you talk about these, they've been just biting and they're chomping their bits to wait to hear what you have to say about your pieces here. So we have, there's one behind you, which you could just talk to me about.
Yes, well, I did. There's 3 in the studio that, do you know what a putti is in Italian? A putti is a little winged figure. Well, I call these putti totems, and they are all winged figures. And the one behind me is called Confection, and she is created with all old vintage kitchen materials.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
Yes, and the ones back here, the tall one is Fact Finder, and he's sort of a noble type of winged figure. And I think the one next to it is my favorite. That is Tutti Pretty. And she's just made with pretty things.
Very, very, very pretty. And now you have this. The caged bird is trying to get out, and there's feathers all over. It doesn't look like a bird anymore.
Well, I use cages a lot in my work, and that cage I crafted myself out of wire and an old wine cask that I found up in Woodside. And the idea, it's called Outside Looking In. And I think you're to decide whether the birds are wanting to go into the cage in the sky or stay in the one they're in.
You know, I do know birds, and I do know that birds like to be in their cage. It's a safe place to be. It's kind of scary to be out.
Yes.
Yeah. And the last one we have here is another cage.
Another.
Same idea of the outside and inside.
Yeah, another piece dealing with the idea of confinement and freedom.
And what's this one called?
Well, that one is called Castle in the Air.
Okay.
And I was looking at the idea that we have dreams and aspirations, and sometimes if all we do is stay with dreaming, we just sort of lulled into stupor and we never get anything done. However, the dreams can be the catalyst for achieving great things. So that's sort of the idea of putting a sky, which you would think is unlimited freedom, inside of the wrought iron cloche, which is a symbol of confinement. So again,
that is one of my favorite
pieces.
When I first saw your work, I saw this one, and and I thought this is an amazing,
Thank
deep
you.
thinking artist. It's I really like that piece.
I hear that a lot. People will look at the work and they see one thing, but the longer they look at it, more things are revealed, or the viewer brings their own experiences and ideas, and they have their own dialogue and find different and more meaning.
So can you talk to me a little bit about the muse you had for the this piece in particular, these two with the blue sky and the cages and the birds?
There's something about animal cages that they have such pathos. I find them to be very powerful things to work with, and I did a whole series with cages, and in fact my studio has a lot of them still. I'm not sure that I'm done working with cages, but again I was just dealing with the idea of confinement and freedom, and the sky juxtaposed with the cage. It's full of meaning and symbolism.
Well, zoos have always bothered me, although I don't mind having small animals caged in pet stores and homes, and I think because people tend to take them out and give them, like, to be safe and warm and fed, and but the cages, the zoo cages, have always, ever since I was a child, have bothered me. I just thought it was just bizarre. And
well, you know what, artistically, what I think where I was going was, if you have unlimited freedom, the whole sky, that can be confining. You don't know what to do, or you don't, and yet sometimes if you have too much confinement, like the animal in the zoo, well, it's very planned out. You don't have to worry. The meal is there. I mean, it's like, so it is a dichotomy.
it is a dichotomy.
Yeah.
You're right. Well, we need, even as social creatures, we need to have our rules. Just like we need to have our own confinement areas that are safe. Otherwise, we're not very happy.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Not very few people want to just walk unburdened, walk the earth unburdened. It's not usual for who we are.
So thinking of these this is how assemblage artists work. We'll look at these kind of issues and then try to think what kind of symbols, like the sky and the cage, and putting those together. Those are powerful symbols. You juxtapose them, and you come up with a third idea. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for talking to me about that. Now let's look at your studio. So your studio, we have some images that we want to show people here in this studio, and also people at home on the TV, so we can show them your art studio and see some of these things you have.
Well, I was telling you earlier, people come to my studio and they're either mesmerized or they run away. And sometimes when I've had open studios, and I have participated in Silicon Valley Open Studios, they're a wonderful event. Sometimes I've had difficulty making sure people understand where the art is and what is just being stored, but my studio is a fun place. And I think assemblage artists, we are magpies. We're always looking for the next motherlode of treasure.
And it's very organized, though.
Very organized. I cannot work without having, if I need a little round metal thing, I know exactly which box that is in. So my studio is full of shelves with boxes and bins. They're labeled. They're usually organized by materials, so glass things will be together, metal things, fabric, and that's I find it very easy to work with.
Oh, we have some pieces. We have here is a nice slide of your studio. Take a look here.
Yes.
Can you describe that for us?
Well, that's just a wall of metal shelving with tools, and some of those bins are I call them my iconography bins, because they will have, like the one on. One of those white bins is filled with elements of things that have to do with childhood. Another is with things that have to do with beauty. So these are just how I put things together while they're waiting to be made into art.
Okay.
So I have a lot of fun. These things, they amuse me. They remind me not to take myself too seriously.
Well, I've met other assemblage artists before, and they told me that this is not a somebody that hoards and has piles of junk, otherwise you can find anything.
No,
so clearly you've got it very, very well organized. In this piece here, you've got another.
That's all wood scraps and wood pieces that will be used in work.
So just like a workshop, in somebody's workshop, they've got their tools and their supplies.
Right, and I think most assemblage artists will have certain things that they collect. So I pretty much will stay with, right now it's cages and objects of fashion like gloves.
Did you bring a photo for us to look at your cages, do you think? What's the next one up
I don't
here?
think we have any. Yes, you might see some cages in the back there. I think there's some bird cages on stands. That glowing thing in the right back in the middle is a railroad crossing light that another artist gave to me. And that thing reminds me all day, stop, danger, don't go there.
So, now this looks like a pretty big studio, and I understand you're going to be going to the Palo Alto City Art Studios, which is Cubberley. Which is a wonderful place.
Yes.
I went to the open studios there, and I found it was very, very inspirational, the artists that are placed there. And you go through a trial to get in. You need to submit artwork, you need to submit a statement, and they visit you, and it's not easy to get into Cubberley. So, but your studio that you're getting into this year is half the size of what you had, or not quite?
Half, a little bit smaller. I'm delighted to be there. Like you say, it's exciting to be with that group, and there's a lot of synergy and a lot of interaction between the artists. But I am moving from 450 square feet to 360, so I will have to figure out a way to do that when we will. But I'm excited about the move.
You're very well organized. You know what you probably do is you can probably just reduce some of the pieces that you thought you might want, but now no longer love as much as you did when you first found them. And some pieces have been given to you, you said, too. People just drop things off for you?
Well, sometimes these objects appear like babies in baskets outside my studio door. People that have come, like for open studios, they'll have something that they don't want anymore, but they don't really know who to donate it to, and they'll remember, oh, that artist. And I have received wonderful insect sprayers, headboards, windows, doors. A dentist gave me an entire box of dental veneers, and I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with those, but they're quite interesting.
Wow. Okay. Huh. Wow. It's almost like you think about Hollywood props rooms where they're loaded down with all sorts of things.
Right.
We also have one more thing that we're going to show, one more set of images we're going to show. Is some of your original muses, the historical people. And I think we've got maybe 4 or 5 people we're going to, not people themselves, but some of their artwork we're going to bring up. Now this one here, this white, all white, very similar. It reminds me of your dress.
Oh, it does.
In a little bit, yeah.
Well, this is Louise Nevelson, and she was an American artist who worked in the 1930s up until her death in 1988, a really long, full career. And she's known for these abstract expressionist crates that you're looking at right now. And typically she would put many, many found objects together, and they would all be colored one color, like black, white, or gold.
She didn't paint them, that she found them this way?
No, she would paint the objects and then assemble them.
And so when did, from the 30s till the 80s? Oh, here we go, somebody else. Now this is this person.
Oh, this is one of my favorites, Robert Rauschenberg. He's the king that showed us the majesty of junk. He came into prominence in the 50s, just passed away a couple years ago, and he's well known for his combines, like the one you're looking at here. And he used non-traditional materials and objects which were combined in these wonderful constructions. Here you see a tire and a wood plank and some kind of electric fixture. Marvelous.
And we have another.
Yeah, I think we're going to show one more, and I believe.
Here we go.
Okay, Joseph Cornell. This is, you're looking at, this piece is called Soap Bubble Set, and it was done in 1936. And Joseph Cornell really is a pioneer of the assemblage movement. And what's interesting is that he almost always worked in the box format. So he used the box as a frame for his composition.
This is very small, right?
Yes, they're very small and often covered with glass fronts.
Right. I've seen these in museums, and sometimes they'll have several of them together.
Yes.
And they'll make, so the museum will then assemble the assemblage together.
Yes.
Now, is this Dada art?
Well, Dada came just before, more like the 20s and 30s and 40s, the Dada artist and the surrealist. And Joseph Cornell sort of came out of that. He was not a traditional surrealist painter or artist, but he came out of that. And the Dada artists were the ones who I think came up, they really focused a lot on the visual juxtaposition, putting two dissimilar objects together so that they contrasted or or had a comparison in the viewer's mind.
And so you still follow this in your work. Well, it's not all of them are well, actually everything you've shown us is contrasted. You've got the bird in the cage, except the bird is kind of an exploded bird.
Right.
Or many exploded birds in one cage, but
I think more and more artists today, particularly with the eco art, when you introduced the program this evening, we're seeing more artists working with what we call repurposing materials, and this is where they're not necessarily old or detritus or fragments of things, but maybe they're taking garden hoses, you know, brand new garden hoses, and or hair dryers, or things that industrial equipment that, for instance, Willie Cole is an artist who is doing marvelous things with hair dryers, and they would be going through it to a dump.
Yes.
Or ladies' pumps. So they're newer, more industrial items.
Old TVs, or I actually saw a really interesting sculpture with a video inside of it, made completely of styrofoam packing material.
Oh, wow.
And it was quite large. It was a totem. So it used all this really modern sort of stuff, and it was you know, quite a statement of, we're completely into video and we use styrofoam and it gets thrown away, but I'm going to turn it into art.
Oh, yes. I've seen chandeliers made out of little plastic medicine bottles. I mean, just things that are just, and they're not like Kraft. I mean, these are really objects of art that are really make you think, that have beautiful quality to them. So.
Well, we're almost out of time, and is there anything you'd like to tell either our audience or someone out there in TV land that is fascinated with the assemblage, which is not new, evidently you've told us, but it seems like it's really bursting on the scene now, and because of also the eco-art movement. Is there anything you want to leave?
It is just, come join the tribe. There are particularly with the internet, it's possible to connect with other people around the world. I actually belong to an assemblage Yahoo group.
Really?
And it's amazing, because if I have, like, for instance, a gluing problem, I can say, how do I glue these two things? And somebody in Bulgaria or New Zealand will say, try Bondo. It's wonderful. And we help each other with shows and exhibitions. And so
well, that's wonderful. You know, I have to admit that I'm involved in an eco-art project that's going to be coming out this summer, and I thought, well, I'm involved in it, I should probably try to submit something, but I realize it's got to be an assemblage, and I've got the pieces. I'm thinking, I'm not sure. So thank you. Okay. And thank you so much for coming tonight.
Well, it was a pleasure. I have always admired the work that you do for the artists here in our community on San Francisco Peninsula.
Thank you very much.